Okay, today we're going to go straight into the guided practice. My hope was for you to watch the video with the notes explaining special right triangles. If you still haven't done that, you need to do that on your own time in case what we do right now as guided practice is not efficient and not enough for you to get mastery of understanding. So please go to that video. It's on Edmodo. It's in the video lesson 2 folder. And I am going to recap some key facts and some key rules and pretty much understanding that you need to know for the two types of special right. Now, here's our guided practice, so we're going to walk through these together. And for each of these triangles, it tells us right now that for each of these triangles, they're each going to measure the 45, 45, 90 degree triangle. That special right is the one we call a right isosceles. And the formula that you're going to use for the special right triangles that are right isosceles, opposite the 45 is x. So that's also 45, so it's also going to be x. And so opposite 90, the hypotenuse, is going to be x times the square root of 2. Now, what we did on the video, and let's just kind of recap what I did on the video, was that since all of these are going to be a right isosceles, then we need to go ahead and put the box to indicate the right angle. And on your notes, the first thing was to identify the parts. Opposite the right angle is always going to be the hypotenuse. So this over here, and actually let me fix this. This is your hypotenuse, and I'm just going to abbreviate. Now, in a right isosceles, you always have the measurement 45 and 45. So as long as I see 145, then I know the other 45 is. Also, to indicate this a right isosceles, I could just show you arc marks to indicate the angles are congruent. And if I know this is a right angle, then the other two have to be acute, and their sum has to be complementary equal to 90. Since they're both equal, they have to be 45. Also, if, and you might not have to necessarily write this, but if this is 45 and I look opposite to that side, which is 6, and opposite to the other side, which is 6, since they're both angles are 45, then the both sides are going to be congruent as well. So here, the 6 represents the leg, and this side also is your leg. Your legs are congruent when you have a right isosceles. So, with that being said, if this leg is 6, and if the legs are always the same, then this leg over here is also 6. Now, the part that we need to review from the video is the formula. The formula states that, and you have this part on your formula chart when you take a quiz or test, you'll have a picture of a right isosceles triangle. The legs are x and x because those two are the same. And then the hypotenuse is always going to be x times the square root of 2. Meaning, if I have the leg and I go to my hypotenuse, I'm always going to multiply by the square root of 2. Okay? So, to find the hypotenuse, you always take the leg and multiply it by the square root of 2. Since I know my leg is 6, then all I'm going to do here is just substitute and do 6 times the square root of 2, which is just 6 square root of 2. Okay, so that's our hypotenuse. The legs are the same. Now, if I needed to, which is what we're going to do on the next triangle, what if you are given the hypotenuse? So here has to be where the right angles are. You have a leg, and 10 is your hypotenuse. So if I have the hypotenuse and I go back to the leg, or think of it like this, on this very first problem, from the leg to the hypotenuse is multiplied. So if I come back to my leg, I'm going the opposite. I'm doing the inverse. So coming back is going to be dividing by radical 2. So from the leg to the hypotenuse, I'm going to divide by radical 2. Well, since this hypotenuse is 10, to find the leg, I'm taking whatever the hypotenuse is, and I'm dividing by radical 2. So I'm just going to substitute 10 divided by radical 2. I cannot leave a radical in the denominator. I have to rationalize it. This is what we did with simplifying radicals, those rules to do so. So I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by the radical 2. And now I'm just going to do top times top, bottom times bottom. Well, 5 times radical 2 is just going to leave me with 5 square root of 2. Radical 2 times radical 2 is the square root of 4, which is a perfect square, so you're left with 2. Because remember, we don't want a radical at the bottom. But then now I can see that these two are both outside the radical, and I can simplify that. 10 divided by 2 is just going to leave me with 5 square root of 2. And that's my leg. So both of the legs are 5 square root of 2. So as a review, or things that you need to know for right isosceles or 45, 45, 90 degree isosceles, opposite the 45s are x. Opposite of 90 is x times the square root of 3, or x square root of 2, excuse me, that's just 3. But you can add this to your notes just as a little review. If I want to find the hypotenuse, if I want to find the hypotenuse for a right isosceles, it is always the leg times radical 2. If I want to find the leg of a hypotenuse, it's the hypotenuse divided by radical 2. Now, I'm just going to simplify it, okay? So, or we're going to rewrite it. Leg equals hypotenuse. You can show division like a fraction, square root of 2. And I can't keep the radical at the bottom, so let me show you what happens when you rationalize it and simplify the formula. If you multiply by radical 2 on the top and the bottom, you get that the formula is just going to be hypotenuse times square root of 2 over 2. So it doesn't matter if you just want to simplify like that, or remember the leg is the hypotenuse divided by radical 2, and the hypotenuse is the leg times radical 2. We're going to use those relationships to find the missing parts. So in the third triangle, it's always going to be right isosceles, so we're going to have the 90 and a 45. So 8 square root of 2, this is going to represent a leg. Well, the legs are always congruent, so automatically I know the other leg is also 8 square root of 2. Now I need to find the hypotenuse. So I'm going from my leg to the hypotenuse. To find the hypotenuse, it says up here, you're going to take the leg and multiply by the square root of 2. So whatever the hypotenuse is, I'm going to take the leg, or to get the hypotenuse, excuse me, I'm going to take the leg and multiply by the square root of 2. So I'm just going to substitute the leg. The leg was, in our problem here, the 8 square root of 2. Just substituting in. And I'm going to still multiply it by the square root of 2. Well, inside, outside, outside. I know that the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 4. This is a perfect square. And if it's a perfect square, it comes outside the radical. So basically, I have 8 times 2, because the square root of 4 is 2, which is 16. So the hypotenuse is 16. Okay? All right, now, let's look at the next one. We have the leg to be 9. So I know the other leg is 9. This is always going to be, for these problems, we're always going to make it a right isosceles. I need to go to the leg to the hypotenuse. So I'm going to multiply by radical 2. 9 times radical 2 is just going to leave me with 9 square root of 2. Okay. Now, the next one. Our right angle has to be over here. Opposite the right angle is the hypotenuse. The two legs are perpendicular and they're congruent. So that means the other leg is also 7 square root of 2, or 7 times the square root of 2. I'm going to the leg to the hypotenuse. So leg to the hypotenuse, you're going to multiply by the square root of 2. So basically, I'm taking my leg, which is 7 square root of 2, multiply it by another square root of 2. And this is similar to what we did on the third problem. We should know now radical 2 times radical 2 is just going to leave you with 2. So I got 7 times 2, which is 14. Alright, now, for this next one, again, we have our right angle. The larger side is our hypotenuse, and it's opposite the right angle. So the part that is given to us is the hypotenuse. We are trying to find the leg. So now we got to go from the hypotenuse to the leg. To find the leg, you take whatever the hypotenuse is and divide it by square root of 2. So our hypotenuse is 14 square root of 2. Now if I divide that by square root of 2, I can see now that the square root of 2's are just going to cancel out. And so the leg is 14. Now, you could have just saw that physically because leg times, if this is always leg times square root of 2, then the 14 is the leg. All right, you try the last 3, and I will put the answers up here, and it's part of the work, and hopefully you can check to see that you have understanding how to do right isosceles. Let's go ahead and pause the video, try the last 3, and then start it back up. All right, check your answers. So hopefully on the first one, the hypotenuse was 6 square root of 6 because they gave me the legs. To get the hypotenuse, you do leg times square root of 2. So that was why we have up here the square root of 3, which is the leg, times the square root of 2. Well, you just multiply the inside radicands together, get you 6 square root of 6. Now, on the next one, they gave you the hypotenuse, so you have to work backwards to get to the hypotenuse to a leg. Like here, you're going to now divide by the square root of 2. So the hypotenuse divided by the square root of 2, substitute the hypotenuse, 8 square root of 6 divided by square root of 2. Well, both of these are inside, so I can simplify that. The square root of 6 divided by the square root of 2, or 6 divided by 2, is why we have 8 square root of 3. And then, last but not least, we have the hypotenuse. We're trying to find the leg. Again, to find the leg, you do the hypotenuse divided by the square root of 2. And so we take that 13, divided by square root of 2. We can't keep the radical at the bottom, so we rationalize it, leaving you with 13 square root of 2 over 2. All right, so do me a favor, flip the page, go to page 11, and now we're going to look at the second type of special right triangles. The next type that we have is what we call a 30-60-90, and with the 30-60-90, opposite the 30 would be x, opposite the 60 is now going to be x times the square root of 3, or x square root of 3, and opposite 90 is 2x. Opposite the 30 is what we call the short leg. I just do SL. 60 is the long leg, and always opposite 90 is the hypotenuse for H. So now we have 3 parts we need to label. Then we have 3 different rules. The rule is to do right scalings, or 30-60-90. We got to always identify where the parts would be located. Opposite the 30, since this is the smallest angle, would be the smallest leg, the short leg. And then 60 is the largest, or largest compared to the 2 acute that remain. So this would be the long leg. And always opposite the 90 is the hypotenuse. The goal to solve right scalings, or 30-60-90, is you got to always start from home base. And in these problems, short leg is always home base. One of the relationships that remains the same is starting from a short leg and going to the hypotenuse. If I'm at this short leg and I go up to the hypotenuse, I'm now going to multiply by 2. I hope you can see that's a 2. So the rule from short leg to hypotenuse is multiply by 2. So if my short leg is 8, the hypotenuse has to be 6. If my short leg was my short leg was 8, the hypotenuse is 16. If it was 3, then it would be 6. If it was 10, it would be 20. You just double it. If I'm going from the short leg to the long leg, I'm now going to multiply by square root of 3. So my short leg is 8 times the square root of 3. This is just 8 root 3, or 8 square root of 3. But if I have the long leg and I have to get back to home base, because that's where you start, I'm now going to divide by square root of 3. Same here. If I have the hypotenuse, let's say the hypotenuse was 30, to get back to the short leg, since short leg to hypotenuse is times 2, we're now going to divide by 2. So you got to know when you're multiplying, when you're dividing to work these problems out. And don't let the rotation or orientation of the triangle confuse you. You always start from home base. So I can physically see that this is the short leg. 12 is the hypotenuse. Put an H there. The long leg is over here. So now I have the hypotenuse. I have to go back to the short leg. When I go back to the short leg, I am going to divide by 2. So 12 divided by 2 tells me that this short leg is 6. Now that I have the short leg, because you have to start, or you have to get to, and then start from to find home base. So I know what the short leg is 6. To get the long leg, I'm now going to multiply by the square root of 3. So that's basically just saying 6 root 3. All right, here's another example. Opposite the 90 is the hypotenuse. That's my H. This has to be my short leg. It would be opposite to 30. 10 root 3 is my long leg. So I have to start from the long leg and get to home base. This is home base. Always the short leg. So long leg to short leg, I'm now dividing by root 3. So think about this. 10 root 3 divided by root 3. Okay? If I had 10 root 3 divided by root 3. Well, the square root 3s are going to cancel out. So the short leg is 10. And the short leg to the hypotenuse is always times 2. So that means the hypotenuse is 20. Okay? After a while, you're going to start seeing patterns, and it'll start eliminating some of the steps. So in this next one, the hypotenuse is here. Short leg is the 7 root 3. The long leg is over here. I have the short leg, so I'm going from the short leg to the hypotenuse. I times by 2. So that would just basically say 2 times the square root of 3, or 7 square root of 3. Just double it. So the hypotenuse would be 14 root 3. 14 root 3. Now, short leg to the long leg, I'm times it by square root of 3. So my short leg is 7 square root of 3, times it by the square root of 3. Well, that's just going to come out to be 21. 21, okay. So 9, the hypotenuse. That's the biggest side. Short leg, long leg, go to the hypotenuse to the short leg. We have to divide by 2. Well, half of 9 is 4.5. Now to get to the long leg, we're now multiplying by square root of 3. 4.5 square root of 3. So you guys just know when to multiply, when to divide, what number to multiply by. We never use the square root of 2 with the 30, 60, 90 right triangle. Square root of 2 is only for 45, 45, 90. All right, so hypotenuse, short leg, long leg. Short leg is your home base. That's where we need to get to. So take the 12, get back to that short leg, which is dividing by square root of 3. So to get to my short leg, I take my 12 and divide by square root of 3, and I have to rationalize this because I can't have a square root of 3 at the bottom. 12 square root of 3 divided by 3 can be simplified to 4 root 3. And to go to my hypotenuse, I'm just going to double that, which will give me 8 square root of 3. All right, so try the last 3, and pause the video and then check your answers. All right, short leg, hypotenuse, long leg. I didn't label that other one. Sorry. All right, so here, short leg, long leg, hypotenuse. 10, 5. All right, so check your work. Hopefully you got those right. Make sure you can summarize how to solve special rights. There are two types. We have what we call a right scaling, which is 30, 60, 90 right triangles. What are the formulas for this? How do you solve them? What are the parts? Make sure you can identify that one. And the other one is a 45, 45, 90, which is a right isosceles. Break it down, put it in your own words. Recap what we learned, what pattern did we see, what relationships do you know, when to multiply, when to divide for these type of special rights. And get to practicing on the next set of problems on your homework. All right, bye.